Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow Podcast. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Folks, I'm still sick. That's okay. That's okay. We're going to power through because that's what we do. We just keep grinding, right? And I have a grinder here that I am very excited to have. I have Thurmon Thomas. The last time I spoke with him, he was Elder Thomas. He was my assistant. He was the assistant to the president, for crying out loud, as he was leaving. And he had a voice of an angel, could play the guitar, all sorts of stuff. And now here he is live, Thurmon Thomas. Thurmon, how are you?
Fantastic, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is pretty cool to catch up and to join you in this specific way. I think this is really cool what you're doing, and I'm just really honored to be part of it. And it's dang good to see you again.
I know, man. It's been forever. We were just talking off air about it's been like 25 years since we've been on a mission, and it feels like I have a son right now in Peru. I think you have did you have a child that went on a mission?
Yeah, so my oldest served. She's home and married now. My second oldest, she's in Winnipeg, Canada right now. And
Nice.
my third daughter will be leaving to Bakersfield, California in July.
Beautiful
Yeah.
Bakersfield, California.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just got that, right? I just saw you did the live like last weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She's
Yeah.
just had her call about a week. Yep.
So when she pulled up Bakersfield, how did she feel?
How did I feel or her?
Her. Yeah, how did she feel?
I think there was this initial like, "Oh, like, that's not really exciting." You know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
Madagascar or
Yeah, right.
Paris, France, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's Bakersfield. But because of just her disposition and her kind of her soul, she just kept her heart open and immediately just like, "Dad, I love those people."
Oh, that's
And she's
awesome.
just excited. She's excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny, so my son's in, Trujillo, Peru, and it's really more of a vacation than it is a mission, I feel. The guy's on the beach all day, and
Mm.
anyway, he's got someone cooking for him and doing all his laundry and all that, but he's having a great time, really caught the work. It's interesting, he's been out about 9 months, and I told him at the beginning, I was like, "Maybe you'll agree with this." I said, "The time between, like, 9 and 18 months is the best time to be a missionary because you've been out long enough, you understand what's going on, you can't really remember what it was like to be home, you can't really see the end, it's just missionary work," and he just hit 9 months, and he's really hit his stride, and he's just having a great time out there and just doing great, but anyway, what I was saying was, before he left, I took my 2 boys back to Indiana where we served, and, we went through the temple that they built in Carmel and, saw some mission friends that I still had, and we went out there because the WWE had the Royal Rumble out there, so we I just figured perfect time, and my oldest son, this was right before he got his call, and he said something really interesting to me as we were boarding the plane. He goes, "You know, uh, if this hadn't been your mission, this would have just been another place. Like, it wouldn't have been meaningful." He goes, "But the fact that we came here and you derived so much meaning from this place, it tells me that it doesn't matter where I'm gonna go, I'm gonna have a good time, and it's gonna be important." And I go, "It definitely will." And that was really cool because he spent the first 3 months in Iowa, waiting for his visa, and he loved the people of Iowa, and, so he's had, like, kinda 2 different missions and loved them both, so it's pretty cool, you know?
Wise words, and that's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so, uh, so since then, you've had quite a journey. You now are, I mean, you've got a master's in, therapy and psychology, right? Well, will you explain your credentials to me?
Yeah, let me just give you a quick little history of
Yeah.
of where I've been. So after leaving Indiana, I did just a year of school, finished an associate's degree, and decided I was an entrepreneur and
Mm,
was done with school
mm.
and started a couple of businesses. And so in fact, my first business, oddly enough, was a scrapbook paper distribution company.
Nice.
We were connected to my family owned a recycling plant, and we had access to tonnage of cardstock, colored cardstock paper, and so I sourced the equipment to size it down and started distributing all over the world. Um, that didn't end up working that well. It was a great business, but the recycling business kind of failed, and so it all kinda crumbled together.
Mm.
Ended up in real estate, and then I started a digital signage company. We
Mm.
had actually distribution all over the United States there, all the way from Sacramento to Plymouth, Massachusetts,
Wow.
and that
Yeah.
was a cool business.
Mm.
We put a lot of work into that. But at this point, I'm about 33 years old. I've got, at the time, 4 kids. I'm serving in a bishopric. You got a mortgage, got a business that's growing. All the boxes are checked, you know?
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
But I just didn't feel purposeful at night. When I'd lay
Mm.
down and go to bed, I just felt like I wasn't connected to who I am totally.
Mm.
There was a lot of meaning in my life as a father, as a husband, service in the church. But you spend so much of your time at work. If your work isn't purposeful to you, gosh, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. That's how it felt to me.
Mm.
So had an interesting conversation with my wife at the time, and got out the patriarchal blessing, and did some soul searching, and decided to go back to school at that point. Got a bachelor's in psychology here from what's now Utah Tech. At the time, it was Dixie State University,
Mm.
and then went on to get a master's degree from North Central University, in marriage and family therapy. In the meantime, we had 2 more kids. After becoming a therapist, ended up selling the marketing business,
Mm.
and I've been in the wellness, especially the mental health wellness world, ever since.
Mm.
Joined a company, actually joined a practice, and then combined 2 practices. We then grew to 8 locations and 60 therapists, and that was kind of my thing, is growth and development, training new therapists. Loved doing psychotherapy, and then really, it started about 6 years ago. My world just started to kind of fall apart at
Mm.
home.
Mm.
Um, some tough years, some really tough years, but there was so much purpose in the work I was doing that I was sustained in that. Ended up, unfortunately, getting a divorce. We've been
Mm.
divorced, let's see, November 2024, so not a heck of a long time. Um, and in that process, decided to make some changes with well, I kind of almost felt like I had to make some changes.
Mm.
Ended up actually going the route of systemic wellness life coaching rather
Mm.
than full-time psychotherapy.
Mm.
And so that's what I'm doing now. I ended up with my kids full time for about a year.
Mm.
Just That's just barely now starting to change. So I needed freedom, I needed flexibility,
Mm.
and I needed to pursue more of what I was passionate about, which is the whole system of wellness rather than just, a 50-minute talk therapy session, which I love. I love talk therapy. I think it's incredible. It's
Mm.
a very helpful tool for many, many people. Um, but I just feel really strongly about the perspective of systemic wellness. Let's look at everything pertaining to wellness. Let's be investigative and find those core things that are preventing you from feeling and pursuing and being your very best self.
Mm.
And gosh, I love what I do. And it's all just kind of been a journey that's brought me here. And so yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there's so many things to unwrap on that, but I wanna start with the first thing I love the idea of systemic wellness. I love the idea of not just focusing on one thing because we're humans, right? There are so many different elements to environmental, DNA, all these different things that affect us. That the idea of you're just going to go and sit down and talk to someone for 50 minutes and somehow that's going to help you quote unquote heal or whatever therapy term you want to use. It's just not accurate. And I've noticed in my life there's a huge physical component to mental health. So when you say systemic wellness, it sounds to me like you're also talking about diet, exercise, other things that you're also, hormone levels. Is that what you're talking about, or what is the whole approach?
Yeah, those are all. integral components, right? So the
Mhm,
model that I kind of have adopted, it's been around for a long time, but it just kind of helps explain and bring clarity to a systemic approach is what's called the biopsychosocial approach to wellness.
mm, mm,
So you've described really well the biology aspect, right?
mm,
Genetics, physical well-being, sleep, nutrition, exercise, all of those things that make up the body, the human
mm,
body,
mhm,
chemistry,
mhm,
the psychology piece, right? The way I perceive the world, my schema, my
mhm,
personality traits,
yeah,
um, the way I process stimulus, my thought patterns, my emotional reaction, and how I can regulate emotions. And emotional intelligence fits under that psychology piece. And then the third component is social. Um, Relational health is one of those things that, right? If your relational health is terrible, and this can be true for any three of those, right? If any one of those areas in your system is drastically out of balance, it's going to pull everything else out of balance too.
mm, mm,
So we look at the relational health, and part of that is spiritual. What's my relationship with God, higher
mm,
power?
mhm,
What are my close interpersonal relationships, my family, my friendships? It's my
mm.
relationship with self, which kind of bridges both social and psychology. So looking at each one of those categories to me is a true systemic approach to wellness.
Wow, yeah, that is there one element of that that you are seeing consistently is the one that people lack the most?
No, I can't really. I mean, you can find with every client I've sat down with, and there's been a lot in the last 9 years. There are components under each category that can use some work, and I think that's true for most of us, right?
Mhm,
Maybe I hit the gym every day, I eat pretty good, but maybe my sleep's off.
mm, mhm,
My psychology is pretty good. Like I have a pretty positive outlook. I'm fairly high functioning. Gosh, certain things still really trigger me that
mm,
just put me in this weird place if I don't process it well. You know, Most of my relationships are amazing, but dang, I'm kind of lonely.
mm, mm,
And so there's
mhm.
just sometimes there's pieces in each category, and I can't say there's any specific trends other than trends within each category for sure.
Mm, mhm, yeah. So, well, let's talk about that. Is there a trend that you're seeing with people who are coming to you in, say, the psychology point that seems to be most prevalent, particularly in like, we're LDS, that kind of thing. Is there something that you're seeing most frequently?
Yeah, this has been true my entire career so far in the wellness world is there seems to be at the core of the onion, so to speak, at the core of all the challenges in life, there tends to be some core belief that we all battle that we're just not quite enough.
Mm,
And it is
yeah.
a kind of shame component that there's something inherently flawed with me as a
Mm,
human being.
mm,
And gosh, to me, that traces all the way back to the Garden of Eden
yeah.
with the adversary convincing Adam and Eve that they shouldn't stand before God anymore.
Mm, yeah. It's a good point, man. It's funny you bring that up because you hit me. I was like, I joke with people. I go because I've been very generally pretty successful in my life, and they say, "Well, what is it?" And I go, "Well, I think it's like I think I have a superiority complex, and I think everything I do better than everybody else, but an inferiority complex where I think everything I do isn't good enough."
Yeah.
and and it's so interesting that you hit on that, and you seen that pretty consistently across genders and across faiths and everything.
Across, yeah, all demographics. When we drill down deep enough to core beliefs, that seems to be the one below them all that kind of influences the rest. Whether they're showing up with anxious symptoms or depressive symptoms or relationship issues, there seems to just be this sabotaging core belief that it's just something wrong with me.
Is there something in particular that we're doing that's causing that, or what do you think that is?
Mm. Well, from a purely spiritual standpoint, I believe that it's the great lie of the adversary that he started, like I said at the very beginning,
Yeah.
right? If he can convince us that we're unworthy in any way, then we fail to progress in the ways that we can and ought
Mm,
to.
yeah.
If he can convince us that our potential isn't truly to be like God, in other words, because there's something wrong with us, then he in effect damns us.
Mm.
And I believe that from a purely spiritual standpoint is where this comes from, is it's that inner lie. The other thing, if we look at physiology, the brain structure, our midbrain, which I call the natural man,
Okay.
the Untethered Soul book calls it the crazy roommate. Like there's all kinds of names: caveman brain, primitive brain, whatever. I call it the natural man brain. We know what King Benjamin said about that.
Right.
Um, that midbrain is constantly on the lookout for threat,
Mm,
things that could harm us.
mhm.
And unfortunately, it isn't very intelligent. It's very primitive and it's very basal. It's very instinctual. It's pre-conscious. Anything that it perceives that could cause us harm, it sounds the alarm. Run, fight, freeze. Don't do it.
Mhm.
Stop. And so that this idea that it's telling us also, it's perpetuating the lie. You might not remember this, but were you there when Lauren C. Dunn came and spoke in our mission? Were you there yet?
No, I wasn't there yet. Yeah.
So he spoke about this very thing. He said the adversary may give you the lie, but then your own natural man brain perpetuates it that you're not
Mm.
enough.
Mhm.
But there's
Mhm.
purpose in that. The midbrain thinks it's helping us by saying, "Hey, this might not go well, and if it doesn't go well, you'll hurt. So let's
Mhm.
just not.
Mm. Mm.
You're not quite good enough. People will think you're weird. Um, you can't succeed totally. Like so, it's better just to not to right." And that's
Yeah.
that's really that primitive brain trying to preserve life. And gosh, the ironic thing is that in its attempt to preserve our life, can sure do a good job of preventing us from living. You know.
Yeah. It's interesting about human psychology. One thing that I've noticed, I've talked a lot with my sons in particular, but also my daughters about confidence.
Mm,
Because I remember, like, for example, when my son was about my oldest son was about 14, him and all his friends, they were just starting to get into girls and they were talking about being afraid of, rejection and stuff. And one of the things I remember thinking to myself was, by all accounts, I'm a pretty eclectic guy. Like I like pro wrestling and I like hard rock music. And members are like, I don't know about all that. I'm fine going to a Comic Con. I can go to a lot of different strange places. And, but the thing is I've always kind of owned it. And so nobody's really like, they might have made fun of me for a minute, but once they saw it wasn't affecting anything, it kinda stopped, and so it's funny to me because it almost seems like I tell my kids, I'm like, "Yeah, okay, someone might think you're weird, but they only kind of pick on you because they know it gets at you. If you just go, 'whatever,' usually it's not a problem, and then it kinda becomes a part of your personality and people appreciate it." You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know, how would you, as somebody if you're talking to a kid or something like that, how would you try to encourage that in somebody?
Great question. I think you're right. I think that once you own who you are and you're okay with it, and I think that's where it really starts is being okay with yourself.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, some of us have to fake it till we make it. And I kind of hate that phrase, but it's kind of true
Yeah,
because
yeah,
experience is a great teacher. Yeah.
sure.
Whether you fail or succeed, you learn.
Mhm,
And one of the things that I try to help the younger people and actually adults too is realizing that, gosh, you know what? Everybody's kind of in a similar headspace.
mm,
Everybody carries around some insecurities because of that self-preservation part of our brain. I don't say it like that because that's geeky, but
mhm,
the idea here is like, hey, you're not alone in this. Like
mm,
everybody's kind of thinking about themselves and showing up a little insecure. And my favorite way to help people through that is to just teach them a little game they just
mm,
call the what if game.
mm,
We're like, okay, so gosh, I'm gonna go talk to this girl or this guy or this new friend group. I'm gonna try this new thing. What if it doesn't work? I think that's a great question. What if?
mhm,
But you make them answer it.
yeah,
Yeah, what if?
Mhm.
And then they say the thing that they're afraid of. Well, well, I would get rejected. Yeah, gosh, dang, that would suck. Then
Mhm.
what? And you
Yeah.
keep moving that fear wall,
Mhm.
and the brain will come up with new reasons not to do it.
Sure.
Then what? Well, then I'll feel crappy and I won't, it won't work. Oh, yeah, dang. Then what?
Yeah.
Well, then, like literally, then what? Like, well, I'll just, school will be over and I'll come home and grab a snack. Okay, great. Then what? You realize that, right? This fear wall is purely perception.
Yeah.
And once you move that wall far enough, there's always resolution,
Yeah.
especially with the gospel perspective. Right? There really is nothing truly to be afraid of that should limit us.
That's so true. I've told my kids often, I go, "Gosh, I when I was your age, there were so many things that I worried about that now I look back and realize how silly it was to worry about." You know what I mean? And I was like, and it doesn't mean it's not like a legit worry for you right now.
Right.
I'm just saying as you get farther away from it, you realize I spent a lot of emotional effort on something that in the end really didn't matter. And as far as what you were saying earlier, this is what I said to my I told my kids when that same thing, "Well, what if I get rejected?" I always go, "There's another way to look at this." And I said, because I asked them, I go, "What do you think the worst is gonna happen?" They go, "Well, they'll reject me." And I go, "I don't think that's the worst thing that would happen. I think the worst thing that could happen is that person's your soulmate, but you missed it because you were too afraid to go talk to him, right?" And so, I think that helped my son. I don't know about his friends so much, but it helped my son because I mean, of course, he's not getting rejected. He's a 6'4", blonde-haired, blue-eyed, sings like an angel and plays the guitar just like you. So it's like, no, he's having no issues trying to get, a woman. But yeah, I think that it's all about perspective. And one thing that's a benefit of going on a mission logistically is you get so much rejection, you realize it isn't that big a deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It doesn't really mean anything other than what's next.
Yeah. So here's a question for you just personally as you're going through, because it sounds to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like this transition into this wellness kinda happened all around the same time that things were not looking so good for you. Do you think that your experience going through the issues at home, uh, colored the way you practice now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's given me an entirely new depth of understanding.
Mhm.
This idea that the idea of compassion and empathy means something different. It isn't just theory. It's like, hey, I have felt something similar to that.
Mhm.
And having been through something, the experience of it personally is a lot more powerful than anything you can read in a textbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's shifted the way I approach people. It's shifted my own level of kind of compassion for others and the pain that they actually feel. Because until you feel that kind of pain, there really is no concept of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can think, "Ah, gosh, that must hurt. I can't imagine." No, you can't until you've been through it.
Right.
And once you've been through that kind of pain, all of a sudden it's like, "Oh my gosh." So there's a deeper connection in that kind of relationship of coaching and wellness, that's deeper, more meaningful.
Yeah, and there's a couple things you said that I think will really resonate with a lot of my listeners. One of the things that I often tell people when they say, because you probably like me when you looked like everybody else, you had your own views on what was going on, and then suddenly you don't. Your family doesn't look like everybody else's, and then you're like, oh wow, you know, uh, this is a very different view from here. And so I often tell people, you can have all the you could think you're gonna react any certain way, you think you're gonna have these deal breakers, you don't really know what you're gonna do till you get there. And then once you get there and you see it, you have a little more empathy for why people react the way that they do. And, sounds like that happened for you. The other thing that I think is interesting is you mentioned earlier, you said, "I was doing all the checkbox things, and then, but I wasn't really being fulfilled." Did you have as you were going through some of the stuff you were going through, did you have a moment where you were like, "Wait a minute, I did all the checkbox things, like, I was in a bishopric, I went on a mission, I did all these things," and did you have some to kinda not like a faith crisis, but something in that same time frame?
Um, for me, I think it was a little different than that. I don't ever remember having that kind of experience where it was like, "Hey, what the heck? This isn't how it was supposed to go."
Mm,
But I understand that perspective. I do because, right, we're kinda taught that if you check the boxes, then you'll prosper in the land, whatever that
mm,
means.
sure.
Um, for me, it was more like I look back and I'm like, "Dude, I did things and acted in ways, behaved in ways that I could have never comprehended myself acting."
Yeah.
I developed at one point this sense of kind of rebellion,
Mm,
like, I'm so sick of hurting, to heck with that, I'm gonna find something to make me feel better.
mm,
Now, fortunately, even though I did cross boundaries that I just never dreamed of ever crossing, it didn't get so bad that I lost the things most precious to me, and I'm
sure.
grateful for that. But doggone, for me, it was almost like this. I got so angry at just my situation. I got so tired of feeling sad and alone that instead of kind of letting that pain humble me and get me closer to God, I found myself in kind of a rebellious, well, I'm gonna take care of me then.
Mm,
But I always knew
yeah,
there's always that voice in the back of my head like, well, this is stupid.
yeah. But that's one of those things that you're saying though that is it's what I'm saying when I talk to people about it is I go, "You know, you guys you don't understand until you've been there." Like, there's something about what you said that, is very almost Christ-like, and what I mean is you said you really until you've experienced it, you don't really know what it's like, and the Savior, we learn through the doctrine, experienced all of it so he can succor us. Going through that, I'm sure, and coming out the other end and maintaining the things that are most important to you, maintaining your faith, maintaining, family relationships and being able to do those things, I'm sure has made you a better coach for those people who are going through it and maybe have a different experience. I'm sure that makes you a more empathetic and better coach. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. The rapport I'm able to have with clients on one hand, and then on the other hand, I'm more methodical and cautious.
Mm,
I'm more, yeah, more methodical. I'm more intentional in the things that I'm coaching
mm,
because you realize how fragile certain situations can be.
yeah.
Now there's a component of, hey, let's be confident and brave, but there's also one that says, hey, let's be patient
Mm,
and recognize that this isn't just theory, this is human experience.
yeah.
And that empathy guides kind of what you do next in a coaching session. And I'm more patient now, more understanding, um, little less shooting from the hip, so to speak.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
the thing is, though, is I bet in some instances you kinda can shoot from the hip a little bit in that you've been through it, so maybe not shoot from the hip, but you can probably respond pretty quickly because you don't have to research, your life is the research in some of that stuff.
Yeah. That's very true. I think really it's, gosh, there's a difference between wisdom and knowledge, right?
Yeah, 100%,
And so I think
100%.
that's the component that was missing is I had lots of knowledge about divorce, separation, and co-parenting, and all that stuff. You have knowledge because you can read about it, think about it, conceptualize it.
Mhm.
But until you go through it,
Yeah,
you don't have that component of wisdom
yeah.
experience. Yeah.
One of the things that comes up frequently when I get asked questions and stuff about this, like, I do these Just Me podcasts where people can send in questions, and there was one question that I failed to answer in my last Just Me, which was my last, episode, that I thought, "Oh, this is a perfect place to ask it." Um, if your experience is anything like, many of them that I know, I'm sure that the process of your family dynamics changing was a long, painful one, and, with that, your children had to face, changing dynamics that, kinda out of their control, and they probably feel a lot of feelings about. So how have you found and how would you coach people to help their kids through changing family dynamics?
So that's an excellent question, and you're right. You highlighted one of the key pains for these kids is that now all of a sudden there's so many things that are affecting them that are out of their control.
Yeah,
So a lot of times kids will find ways to control things. That's where sometimes kids will rebel or end up with other disordered kind of behaviors because it's like, well, at least I can control this.
yeah,
And so the world kind of gets flipped upside down. What we knew to be real and true isn't anymore. This foundation of what a family looks like is shattered. How do you help a kid through that? I would say that the most important thing that I did that seems to help my children the most was to create as much consistency and structure as possible.
mm,
Like, hey, we're all hurting, but every Sunday morning, I'm going to get up and make pancakes, eggs, and bacon.
yeah,
Hey, we're all hurting, but Wednesday night is sushi night.
mhm.
Hey, we're all hurting. It seems like everything's around food for me.
Yeah, I'm the
That's
same way, man. You hit the Sunday morning breakfast hard. I'm the same way.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. What are our rituals of connection? What
Mm,
are the things that we're going to keep consistent and steady no matter how out of control and chaotic life feels? Those regular, consistent patterns of connection and togetherness seem to just kind of help people feel safe.
mm,
And if they feel safe at home, even though things look different, there's
mm,
things that they can count on. There's structure there, things that are connecting and loving. It seems
yeah,
to be really important, but it's hard to do when you're in the depths of misery.
yeah.
It's dang hard, but it
Yeah,
helps you too.
yeah, one of the things that I've learned and has made me, I often talk to people and I say, I have had simultaneously the best and worst years of my life in the
Yes,
past. And I was like, and the reason why I was able to have those great times in the midst of the worst times you could imagine is because I didn't let my feelings dictate what I was doing. So like you mentioned the consistency, the gym was for me was always the one thing. Like, I remember when I was at the beginning of all of this, I said to myself, I was like, "Everything is so out of control. What what is the one thing I can control?" And I said, "I can control my body. I can control what I put in it, and I can control what I look." And so it's like 5 AM every morning, up, no matter how I felt, at the gym, protein shake right after, like, every single morning, no matter if I was happy, sad, tired, angry. That gym was a place where I could do it in the very morning, and when that was the first thing I did, I said, "Okay, I just got through the hardest thing I'm gonna go through today. Now I can get through everything else," and it set me on a tone. Same thing with work. Doesn't matter how I feel, I'm going to work. Doesn't matter how I feel, I'm going to church. It doesn't matter how I feel, we're having scripture study. Like, those kind of things, and I think that there's a level, at least with even with the younger generation especially, and I don't know, maybe you can comment on whether, this the kind of the therapization of everybody is doing this, but there seems to be so much focus on feelings that sometimes I can see people that it's almost like, "Well, my feelings matter, so therefore it should dictate what I do." And I don't know how you devote you see what I'm saying? Like, how do you pull that apart? Does that make sense?
absolutely makes sense. There's this fine line between using emotions as an excuse for maladaptive behavior
Exactly.
and learning emotional intelligence. The big component, a really important component of emotional intelligence is learning to regulate and problem solve.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do next? What do you do with those emotions? And then what's next? Right? If so emotions are a good thing for us to focus on as far as learning how to process, acknowledge, release, and
Mhm.
then go do something, right? And then go move forward with the next thing in your life. If the emotions aren't processed first, we tend to act in a fight, flight, freeze way. We tend to do
Mhm.
things that aren't going to get us good results.
Mm,
So focusing on the emotions long enough to process release, then okay, what's my next task?
mm,
You move forward.
mhm.
And if you still feel sad and afraid, like you said, go anyway.
Yeah.
Go do the thing that's going to help you feel better instead of
Mm,
using that emotion as a utility against growth.
yeah. How do you okay, so how do you teach that? How do you teach that, particularly to young people?
Yeah. I get a little geeky with helping people understand emotions and what their role is first.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I say, remember, when that emotional brain, when that midbrain is ignited, when it's
Mhm.
feeling big things, its primary goal is to make you stop,
Mm. Mhm.
to avoid things, to shut you
Mhm.
down.
Mhm.
What happens if you continue to listen to that part of your brain? It kind of help them walk through, right? The long term outcome of obeying the midbrain is not life, it's the
Mhm.
opposite.
Right.
And so first teaching that, conceptualizing that, and then saying, okay, so, but the emotions are so big. How do you move forward with such big emotions? Well, here's a couple of tricks that you can use to take a little wind out of those emotions. Number one, just name it. What are you feeling?
Yeah.
People have a hard time saying, hey, I'm sad.
Yeah.
Instead, they say what they think. Life's unfair, or I'm everything's out of control, or whatever. They say a belief, a thought. No, I want you to say what that feels like. That feels sad.
Mm.
Okay, just by saying the true core emotion, research backs this up. 70% regulation of that emotion.
No kidding.
From a 10 to a 3, just by saying, I feel this.
Wow. That is fascinating.
It's unbelievable. And I've seen it so many times in session with people that if I can guide them to the core emotion and they say it verbally, it's an immediate relief.
Mm.
Then you can problem solve because the midbrain's no longer in charge. Now you still feel kind of crappy,
Yeah.
but it's a little easier to go do the gym, go to school, go to church, do the right thing if you're at a 3 instead of a 10.
Yeah.
And understanding that, okay, we feel good enough now. What do you think logically is the next thing that will help you feel even better?
Mm.
This, but I don't feel like it. Yeah. So what do you think you should do? Do it
Right.
anyway. Like they
Right.
tend to come to the conclusion on their own if the emotion is first
Yeah.
processed.
So let me ask you another question on this. This is I think an interesting one because you there are there are in certain circumstances some people have a more of a sensitivity to what we would call maybe emotional dysregulation than others, right? So some people may be able to handle some hard conversations faster than or more than say other people can. But in the let's say someone's in the midst of an emotional dysregulative situation. My experience in those situations is it's really, really hard to get them to listen to reason in those moments. So, like you mentioned, like, what are you feeling right now? How, in someone's dysregulated, do you get them into a place where they can even process something like that?
Really good question. Think of the different components. Well, we'll just talk about the two. Well, there's three primary components: the hindbrain, midbrain, forebrain.
Mhm, mhm,
Hindbrain is all autonomic. It's all just
mhm.
running our bodies,
Yeah,
background process.
yeah.
Midbrain, survival, emotions, uh, memory triage, kind of like it decides what we need to remember.
Mhm,
The forebrain is the part of us that's problem solving, creative, connecting, really human, right? The high functioning part of us, executive.
mhm,
When the midbrain is ignited in that massive emotional state, and when somebody is more kind of neurotic, right? They are genetically more predisposed to bigger emotions. That midbrain gets loud.
mm,
And the forebrain in those situations, think of them like almost like a toggle switch.
hmm,
If the
mhm,
midbrain's ignited, it almost forces the forebrain into this background place because you don't need to contemplate things. You just need to run, fight, or freeze. Like
mm,
you just need
mhm,
to survive. Very
mhm,
primitive. So in order for us to start problem solving or to introduce rational thought again, we have to regulate the midbrain somehow.
mm,
We either do that through coping skills or we do it by waking up the forebrain. So when
mm,
somebody's in a really tough emotional place, you ask them very basic, fact-based questions.
mhm,
"Hey, what's your birthday?
huh, huh,
Hey, what day is it? Hey, what year were you born? Hey," like, very, like, fact-based, logical. We're just gonna kind of try to wake up that forebrain just a little bit, get it back involved in the game.
mhm,
And
huh,
I've even had people spell words, like, "Hey, spell
mhm,
cat." And they look at me like I'm insane.
mhm,
And they like, "CAT." Like, "Can you spell it backwards?"
huh,
"TAC." How about bear?
huh,
And I'll just kinda make the words a little bit harder and harder and slowly kind of force that forebrain back in line, back online. And as
mhm.
that's happening, rational thought starts to connect again, and then you can lean in a little deeper.
Interesting. That's so fascinating. So fascinating to think like, trying to figure people out and how to help them to see things, and because I think if most people, if they're being honest with themselves, when they get in those spaces later on, they feel bad about them, even if they don't admit it, and they wish they didn't act that way. And so helping people kind of see that has to be meaningful for you.
Oh, it's the coolest thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so meaningful when there's those aha moments and somebody starts to take ownership of change in their life,
Mhm.
and you get to kind of be part of that.
Yeah.
Boy, it's really, really awesome.
So I'm sure over the course of time, though, you've probably ran into clients who they never get the aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Um, so when is it? Maybe this would be as a client or even just a friend in your life or someone close to you. How do you let go of giving them that aha moment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was a tough one, especially early on in my career,
Mhm.
'cause you
Mhm.
you you take so much ownership of somebody's growth and change that you almost start to connect. You connect so deeply with the outcomes.
Right.
And in fact, I remember confronting this about 3 months in to my career,
Mm.
working at a youth home, and these poor kids had been through some stuff, man.
Right.
And I would lay awake at night thinking, "How can I help this person who's been through so much? They're telling me things I could never comprehend before." And they just a lot of them wouldn't dig in, they wouldn't change, they wouldn't accept that process.
Mm.
And I'm like, "Gosh, if Thurman, if this is how you're gonna feel being a therapist, you're gonna burn out in, like, 6 months."
Right. Right.
Like what's going on here? I remember looking in the mirror one day and realizing how much I was owning their outcome,
Mm.
the outcome in general.
Mm.
And I looked in the mirror and I said, "Thurman, are you Jesus?"
Hmm.
He was like, "No,
Right.
of course not. Not in any way." "Okay, he's got this."
Mm.
And so early on, I had to learn how to trust, number 1, that there is a savior and a loving heavenly Father with eternal perspective who loves this person more than I can comprehend.
Mm.
And there's a plan and a path for all of it.
Yeah.
It's timing. It's just timing. And to God there is none, right? It's all things are present.
Yeah.
So trust God, number 1. That's what I had to learn how to do. And realize that I'm really I'm just a tool.
Yeah.
Next, trust that person.
Huh.
Trust that the human nature is powerful, it's divinely created, it's inspiring, and they might not be ready to change today, but trust that that person will at some point figure it out.
Hmm.
And maybe I'm just part of that journey.
Hmm.
So trust God, trust them, let go of the rest, show up as your best self, and Yeah, that's what's helped me.
You know what I find really interesting about this concept of change is that I think, and I've said this before, I think there's a little bit of a fallacy, maybe it's a Satan thing, where he makes it sound like change is, like, really, really hard and takes a really long time, you know? Um, and like, for example, with me and working out, I mean, there were years where, I did kind of the yo-yo thing where I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it," and I'd go for maybe a month or 2, and I'd drop weight for a while and feel good, but then I'd go right back and yo-yo eat and do all these different things, and I just wasn't I just really wasn't in it, and then all of a sudden, that time that I talked to you about earlier, I just there just something snapped in me where I was like, "I'm changing today, not tomorrow, not on Monday, not after the weekend where I'm gonna binge for a weekend and then start then. I mean, I'm starting right now." And it literally, like, I've never looked back, you know? And that change happened in an instant. Maybe my body change took a while, but the mindset change was immediate. You know what I mean? And so it's really interesting because I think that the change happens in the very moment you decide you're changing.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
absolutely. I think you pinpoint a really important key to this whole thing is that there's this component of identity.
Mhm,
Like at some point you decide who you are.
mhm, mhm,
I'm a guy that goes to the gym and takes care of my body. That's who I am. I choose that guy.
mm,
And once you make that mindset shift of this is who I am and I can control it, you get in alignment with your vision of self, then yeah,
mhm,
that's like a powerful switch that goes off.
mm.
I'm not
Yeah,
the guy that yo-yos anymore. I'm the guy that is dedicated
yeah,
every day. That's who I am. And yeah, the results physically may come over months or years for some of us, but that mindset shift can be really instant, powerful.
yeah. You know, it's so interesting, um, how much in life has to do with discipline and consistency.
Mm.
'Cause, you know, I told my sons both have gotten into sports and are active, and I remember at first time I took my son to the gym, you know, he couldn't lift much, he had never done it, and I had been going for years, and so he would look at what I could do, and he'd get really down on himself, and I'd have to tell him, I'd be like, "Dude, this didn't happen in one workout, right? This is time w the only person you're really in a competition with is yourself yesterday, so just you know, now you can do this." And then he started going and he saw those, you know how it is when you first start working out, the first 6 months, you have these massive gains in your weightlifting and all this stuff. So he just felt real great about himself. After about 6 months, he was feeling real good, you know, and then of course, you know, you know, 17, 18 years old, so he doesn't have to do much and he looks great, you know, and so he thought he was talking trash to me, you know, but so but it's interesting how quick, like, I think I heard somebody say, "You overestimate what you can do in a month, but you underestimate what you can do in a year," you know? I think that's true, you know? I think that just that c 80, 90% of everything we do is just showing up, you know?
So powerful. I consistently show up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
consistency is always greater than intensity. It just
Oh,
is.
yeah. So true. And gosh, you know, I do a lot of mentoring of law students and I hire people. I have a, you know, fairly large team, and when I tell them, I go, "If I had a choice between the most talented and the hardest worker, I'd choose the hardest worker every single day." You know, because they're the ones that will keep showing up when things get hard and they'll push they wanna get better, and I've seen it with athletes, I've seen it within my own kids, you know, the ones that work hard will eventually overtake the talented people who won't. You know,
So
it's
true.
how it works, and so now as you've gone through this, you know, you've been at this 9 years. Actually, let me shift gears to something that I've wanted to ask a therapist about. And this is a safe space, of course. So we can do that. So I have noticed in the last few years an absolute explosion in people who are getting into becoming therapists and things like that. I mean, there seems to be a lot of people. And there's a lot of kind of what I would call like almost meme therapy going out there where a lot of people are seeing things, and do you see, like, the terms that we hear, gaslighting, narcissism, safe space, this stuff, do you see that those terms are being completely misinterpreted a lot? Like, you have people coming in and they say, "Oh, I feel like I've been gaslit," and then you've talked to them and go, "Well, I don't know if that's really what gaslighting is, or maybe that's not, narcissism." Are you seeing some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it's pretty easy for people to over-identify with generalizations of some of these terms, and when you
Yeah.
drill right down to it, they're not as common as you think they are.
Right, right. Y
Statistically speaking alone, right, the number of people with narcissistic personality disorder is really low,
Yeah, right, right.
and
And the funny thing about that is that when you break down narcissism and you look at the traits, we kinda all have a little bit of, like, emotional immaturity that kinda mirrors what a narcissistic trait would be. I think the only difference that someone who's not a narcissist can change it, right? But someone who is kinda can't? Is that, or am I oversimplifying that?
yeah, well, I think if we look at it in terms of personality,
Mhm,
traits,
mhm,
temperament,
mhm,
those tend to be pretty genetic.
mm,
Like, if
mhm,
the research is pretty clear that our temperament is part of our genetic core. And
hmm.
you've had multiple kids and you realize that, right? They come
Oh,
out and
totally.
within minutes, you're like, you feel their temperament.
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
And that
definitely.
seems to be pretty consistent and eternal. And the research backs that up. Whatever core personality traits I'm born with tend to stay consistent throughout the lifespan. Now, that doesn't mean we can't adapt. So people
Mhm,
think, no, I've changed a lot in my life. You've adapted really well,
mhm,
but
mhm.
you're still an eternal identity.
Right.
You've
Mhm,
just adapted against or with your core traits. And so looking at personality traits on a spectrum of extreme high, extreme low, you look at narcissism as a personality trait.
mhm,
All of us are going to fall somewhere in that line, right?
mm, mhm,
And
mm,
not all of the traits of narcissism are unhealthy, but
mm,
there's a component of narcissism that I wish I had more of.
mm.
Like,
Okay.
I wouldn't get trampled over as much as I have in my life.
Right.
I could say no to stuff
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
better.
yeah.
You get really overly high in conscientiousness, for example, and you tend to be a little bit of a pushover.
Right.
So
Mhm,
instead of looking at it as all good or bad, you say, okay, where am I on these lines and what am I working with? And how do I adapt? How do I character myself in a more healthy way? To have a full blown personality disorder is fairly rare, and a
mm,
lot of times there's comorbid stuff, meaning there's other components that are driving the fact that this trait has become disordered. A lot of times there's pretty severe trauma in their past, and you'll notice that when they feel backed in a corner, a true narcissist, when they feel backed in a corner, the worst parts of those traits come out
mm,
to
mhm,
protect and preserve ego.
mm,
And so, yeah, it's thrown around way too much. There's personality traits that can be disordered for sure, but gosh, not everybody that shows up a little bit selfish or defends themselves or blows you off or um, you feel manipulated by. Not everybody that you experience those things with is a narcissist.
right.
We're
Right.
all just trying to survive, and we all kind of show up human sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, this is something that's interesting, and maybe you would relate to this a little bit. In my area in Sacramento, because I'm an attorney, I almost feel like not so much anymore, but for a while, I was almost like the lightning rod for anybody who'd ever had was going through a divorce or whatever. I'd be the first call because they'd be like, "I need a divorce attorney. Do you know anybody?" And my first question would always be, "Are we talking about for you or somebody else?" Right? And then they'd say, "Well, it's actually for me." And we'd kind of get into the story. And one of the things that I found really, really fascinating, particularly in the LDS space, was when I talked to, and it didn't matter whether I was talking to the husband or the wife, right? Because I've talked to both. There seems to be a lack of understanding between people who are trying to live a traditional LDS, traditional family unit, and let me explain what I mean. we have a bit of a LDS culture where people come back from their missions, they get married pretty quick. You know, you know how it was. You were supposed to find your eternal companion, right? So you come back in 2001 and you're searching, right? And it doesn't take long for most people to end up getting married. And, if you're a guy, you're 21, 22 years old, typically you marry someone your age or younger. So you're looking at a girl who's 21, 20, 19 years old, something like that. You guys get married, you start having kids real quick. And then the husband kind of goes out and has a professional life. And then the woman generally will become a homemaker and never really experienced a professional life because maybe they finished school, but then just started having babies, or maybe they even quit school and didn't and so they stay home like we're supposed to. And then we have this weird dichotomy where the men and the women are living completely different lives that they've never experienced. So you have a wife who's dealing with these little, well, I always joke the kids are little narcissists. Like you're dealing with these little like monstrous kids that you're trying to keep alive and they're just draining you. They don't have any adult experience. They don't have any adult interaction most of the day. And then a husband who's going out and braving the world and meeting, and being in that professional space, which is also incredibly difficult. And then they come home and they've both had really hard days, but different hard days. And they almost romanticize the other person's experience. So they're like, well, what have you been, the husband comes home to a house that's a mess. Well, what have you been doing all day? And the wife is going like, what are you talking about? You're over there hanging out with your buddies. You know what I mean? Making all this money and like sitting at the water cool gossiping about somebody getting a partnership or whatever. And I'm over here dealing with these jerks. You know what I mean? So, how do you, if you're talking to somebody as a therapist, how would you bridge that gap? And do you think that that is a bit of an issue within kind of our space?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is, and it absolutely is, and the research backs it up
Mm,
because it's not sustainable if you're not doing things to stay connected,
mm, mhm,
right? If your purpose becomes your career and your wife's purpose becomes the kids, you're living two very separate purposes,
mhm,
and your purposes are externalized, right? My
mhm,
purpose is work, my purpose is kids. So then what we have is this strange phenomenon is once we hit empty nest and start to look at retirement,
mhm,
divorce rates go crazy
mm,
because now our purpose is gone and I'm laying next to a stranger. I don't even know this person.
mm,
And so there is some very meaningful work you can do to say like, hey, those things can't be our purpose.
mm,
My purpose is to provide
mhm,
and preside and protect. Hey, my purpose is to nurture, to be an incredible wife and mother and to teach and educate and nurture our family. Like those are our purposes. What's our overarching purpose? And how do
mm,
we stay connected in that? And so then all the other things we're out and about doing are still connected to that unifying purpose of our relationship together. And that takes effort, intention, and time, right? You have to spend time outside of those separate tasks, being a unit, being together.
yeah.
And it's hard because you're exhausted by the end of the week.
Yeah, and on top of that also, I think that a bigger component of this is listening to understand rather than respond. So many people
Mhm.
like I'm an attorney, I argue all day long, right? And it's so fascinating when you can tell the difference. I mean, you can tell the difference when somebody is just wanting to respond to everything you're saying, and I think that what ends up happening is people get so wrapped up in their own experience and their own frustrations that they're just wanting to be heard and not necessarily hear, and so it just gets so frustrating when you're because I deal with those people all the time, even when I'm dealing with, say, somebody on my staff, and I'm going, "Okay, I get that hear where I'm coming you're not hearing where I'm coming from." You know what I mean? And I think if we did that, quite frankly, in the LDS space, I think if they did that, I think they would realize that the purpose is actually the same, like, the presiding is like, I don't know sometimes if they understand that, yeah, we're out there working, but it's not like I'm out there working just because I love going to work. Like, I'm going out to work because I'm trying to provide a better life so our kids can do extracurriculars, so our kids can go to college one day so that they can have the things that maybe we didn't have growing up. Like, I'm out there working so much and magnifying my callings and doing these things to show them what they can be. And you're doing the same thing by nurturing. You're trying to show them, the loving part. I've often said, uh, moms are for comfort, dads are for courage, you know? So yeah, your mom's the one you go run and cry to when you're hurt. Your dad's the one you go to when you want him to convince you to push through. You know what I mean? Um, and I think if we all had that conversation and really worked it as a team, it'd probably be better. I mean, is that what you're seeing, or is there something else that you would think I'm not hitting?
No, I think that's well said, right? If you can, instead of feeling threatened by the other person's
That's a
daily tasks,
perfect way to put it. Threatened. Yeah, exactly.
instead of seeing that as synergy, that we're both working toward a common goal,
Yeah,
um, then it takes that resentment away right away from it.
yeah,
And understanding, hey, what you're doing is so beneficial. Hey, what you're doing is so beneficial. Tell me about your struggles. Let me hear you. Talk it out, and then hey, let's go on a date
yeah,
because we still like each other.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you had if you had the floor, I know you do a lot of public speaking, and by the way, I just remember you from, when you would give zone conferences and stuff like that. You're an excellent speaker. I can imagine with 20 plus years of extra experience how good you are at what you do. I haven't been to one of your stuff, but when I get a chance, I want to. Like, what if someone came to you and said you have a speaking engagement, you can talk on anything you want. What is the one message you want other people to hear?
Ooh. Yo, that is a huge question.
You're like, I would need all day.
Yeah, I don't know if I could drill that down.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, that is a tough one. There are some standbys, right? There are some things that I tend to hover toward.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I could answer that without a little
Yeah.
time.
Well, what are the things that you find yourself constantly pushing, and maybe there's a few things that even whatever your topic is, you seem to always wanna get back to?
Yeah, I would say that it maybe depends on the space.
Mhm.
If it's a clinical space, I do talk an awful lot about the biology of wellness
Mm,
and how it connects with relational well-being and psychological emotional well-being. Like, I talk an awful lot about how that the body chemistry and functioning kinda connects with an overall picture of wellness. So that's more of a clinical setting. Um, I would say that, that if I was in a spiritual setting, my go-to tends to be forgiveness.
mm,
Just understanding what forgiveness actually means, that it's okay to set boundaries still and forgive.
mm,
Um, that forgiving isn't condoning poor behavior. It's
mm,
letting go of the pain you feel about
mm,
that behavior. So I tend to lean towards forgiveness an awful lot with spiritual settings. And I think in general, I talk an awful lot about how just the human experience, like
mm,
how life happens, how you perceive that dictates an internal process of emotions. Those emotions can influence your actions, and then we get in patterns. And I guess my core genius probably is I'm really good at helping people find their patterns,
mm,
patterns that work and the patterns that don't, and
mm,
figuring out where we can intervene to disrupt the unhealthy patterns. I'm really good at that. So that's
mhm.
probably something that I tend to talk an awful lot about.
That's awesome, and that's so important. It's funny, trying to find, especially when you're dealing with kids, 'cause all my children are so different. I mean, the way to get them to see something is so different. I got 2 kids, a boy and a girl, that, I mean, I could literally put a gun to their head and be like, "You gotta do this," and they'd be like, "Pull the trigger." You know what I mean?
Huh.
And then I got 2 kids where if I look at them wrong, they crumble, they just can't handle it. And so finding the right way to teach those principles and let them see those patterns is really hard, you know? So when you deal with somebody who's got a pattern, how is everybody different on how you point it out, or is there a specific way that you seem to be able to conscientiously put it to them?
We've talked a little bit about personality theory without
Yeah,
calling it that. We've talked about
sure.
the genetic temperament traits, and I think that's part of the genius is discovering what somebody's core personality traits are.
Mm,
What what makes them tick and act the
mhm,
way they do, think the way they do. What part of them is just that's just who their identity is. And it becomes this hidden language.
mm,
If I'm talking to a kid, you describe 2 of your kids, no matter how much force you try to apply, that almost makes it less effective, right?
yeah, exactly.
Coming from like just a purely like big 5 personality trait standpoint, we would say they score really low in agreeableness,
Mhm,
very high in non-agreeable.
mhm,
So with a person like that, right, their core motive is freedom.
mhm, mhm,
And so you shift the language towards freedom rather than
mhm,
force and
hmm,
help them conceptualize the task in a way that provides more freedom for them. So you just adjust the language you use based on those core temperaments. Somebody
mm,
who's very agreeable, they tend to do a little bit better with, just suggestion and actually asking them. But these non-agreeable folks are awesome. They're what I call champions of free agency. They're the front
yeah,
lines, right? In the war in heaven.
yeah,
Freedom.
yeah,
We want to choose.
yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of actually just being a stinker with them, just being like, "You're right, you shouldn't do it. Like, don't ever do it. I don't want you to ever do that again. Screw you, I'm doing it." You
Yeah.
know, it and you can wink at them and let them know that you're messing with them, so they know it's not like this openly manipulative thing, but
Yeah.
I would say that to me has been part of the success I've had is learning how to understand people's core personality traits and adjusting my language to adapt to what makes sense to them.
Yeah, and the other thing I think is important when you have somebody like that and when you're maybe clash, it's funny, I've said this recently a couple times. I actually said this to my daughter when we had a bit of a conflict, and I told her, I go, "I understand that when you get to be about 14 and you go into the age, we're gonna start having strife because you are struggling between being a child and being an independent adult. So as you're going, we're gonna have conflict." And I was like, "And you're gonna rebel, and I understand it, and in some ways, I actually respect it." Right? And I go, but when it gets to the point of willful disobedience, then I gotta crack the whip, and show you where the cage is, right? And so but I told my oldest daughter, I've told her frequently, so she doesn't feel like I'm trying to kill that disagreeableness. I tell her, I go, "I know out of all of my children, you are going to be easily the most successful. You are going to take on the world. No one is ever gonna tell you, like, I know if you ever get into something, you did it on your own, nobody convinced you, right? You did it yourself. I just need to get you out of high school, without throwing you off the balcony. Like, I just have to get you out as soon as I have to accept that there's gonna be a level of gray hair that's coming from you, but when you get out there, you're gonna take on the world, and I believe that. I believe that with my kids. It's shifting of gears a little bit. When I do some speaking and when I do firesides or, speak in the school or whatever, I talk a lot in some way about faith or mindset depending on the group, right? I think it's kind of the same thing. And, because I realized about myself, being successful, and you've been successful too, uh, entrepreneurs and people who are successful, someone asked me what I thought the number one thing was, and I think it was just saying, it just never occurred to me that I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. Like, even when people were telling me I couldn't, I was like, "Well, somebody makes it, so why couldn't it be me?" You know what I mean? Like,
And why not?
and yeah, I think, I've done read some of the studies on faith, mindset, expectation, whatever you wanna call it. It's really fascinating. I don't think people understand how much mindset, faith, expectation really dictates your entire reality. I mean, is that what you've noticed too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you teach that?
Mm. Well, I think there's a little bit of discovery. People's mindsets tend to be where there is that core genetic component of some people are just more optimistic by
Mm,
nature,
mm,
more confident, more optimistic by nature. But most kids are pretty confident. Little
mm,
toddlers.
mhm.
I talk about this in a lot of my lectures. Like, if you're 3 years old, you don't care if there's 50 people in front of you. You will stand on top of the couch in nothing but your tidy whities and a cape, telling everybody to look at you and watch you jump off and just crumple on the floor and think it's the coolest thing ever. Like, there's no lack of confidence in most little kids. A lot of the mindset stuff that's self-limiting, is taught. It's taught
Mm,
to us. It's
mhm,
introduced. And so helping them understand first, what are my self-limiting beliefs? Where's the mindset pieces that are holding me back? Where did you learn that? And let's start challenging that.
mm,
Let's just start chipping away and creating a new belief that we can use to be successful. So a lot of times, yeah, there's some discovery in saying, well, where did you learn that? I remember asking a question in a group once, a bunch of young men. So what do you guys want to be when you're older? And this one young man, this was at a treatment center, so they were life was rough. This one young man said, "Well, I wanna work at Wendy's when I'm older." And he was already like a teenager. Like, "Okay, cool. Then what? Like, what next? Like, do you wanna manage a Wendy's?" I'm over here like, "Come on." And he's
yeah,
like, "Nah, I mean, like, what about, like, owning a Wendy's or being, like, a regional director?" And he's like, "Nah, man, I'm good to just work at a Wendy's."
huh,
And I just couldn't comprehend.
right,
And so I asked him more. It's like, "So why just that? Why not more?" He said, "Well, I don't think I'm smart enough to do anything more."
mm,
Now back to this thing, like, little kids don't ever have those self-limiting beliefs. At
mhm,
some point, I knew somebody introduced that to him. He
mm,
learned that somewhere.
mhm,
And I love asking the question when I hear those big, blaring, self-limiting beliefs. My question is always the same. Where did you learn that you're not smart enough? Who told you that? Who taught
mhm,
you that?
mhm,
And they always know. They
mhm,
always know where it came from.
yeah,
2nd grade, teacher looked at me, told me I was stupid.
mm,
Became a core belief because it came from an authority figure. He
mhm,
adopted it, and it's held him back ever since. Hmm. Now we can start to challenge and reframe. We can challenge that. We can reframe it. We can create new beliefs, and
yeah,
it's a pretty fun process.
yeah, I agree. I was at a career fair at my kid's school, and this kid came up to he was looking at my table, and I asked him, I was like, "You thinking about being an attorney?" He goes, "Yeah, I just don't think it's in the cards for me." And I was like, "Well, why do you say that?" He goes, "Well, grades aren't so good." I'm like, "What grade are you in?" And he's like, I'm a sophomore." I go, "Yeah, nobody cares about your sophomore grades." I was like, I it was and he I go, "It's kinda same thing." He goes, "Well, a teacher said that maybe that I should probably do something else." And I go, "I mean, maybe you should, I don't know, but I can tell you right now, like, freshman year, I went academically ineligible for basketball because I failed constitutional law. Now here I am, I'm an attorney and a pretty good one at that, you know, and
Yeah.
and I said and I even told him, I go, "I went through law school, right, and everybody was worried about their rank." Now, you know how many people have asked me what my GPA was at any stage? 0.
Yeah.
Nobody.
0.
They don't care. And it's like all this and again, it's so fascinating to me. I think, you hear at the end of someone passes away, the things that they wish they would have done differently. One of the things that seems to consistently go up is, "I wish I didn't worry so much," you know? And that's so true. Like, I spent so much time worrying about my grades in law school, and nobody cared. I worried about getting a trial advocacy certificate or a concentration, and nobody cared. You know what I mean? Nobody cared. Now it's just like, how good of an attorney are you? And we were, they just get you to those grades just get you to the next destination. And I just wish more people understood that,
Yeah.
you know? So the work you're doing God's work, sir.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. So, well, listen, we're about running out of time. I ask everybody 3 questions. They're kind of existential, so be prepared. Okay, here we go. You ready for this one?
You bet.
Alright. What would you say is your, biggest success in life?
My biggest success in life is finding purpose and meaning and being a dang good father.
Oh, dude, I feel that. I feel
Yeah.
that. Did you realize that at the very beginning, or did that develop over time?
It's always been important to me, but the last 2 years has it just made it so much deeper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've had a similar experience when, things start going south. It was really, I little bit different than you. I did have at one point, I go, "Why is this all happening, and why am I not feel fit?" I was kinda similar to you actually with well, I've done all the check boxes, why am I not feeling fulfilled? And then I started buying things, right? I'd been kind of financially successful, so I bought the nice car, and then I built, built a movie theater in my house, and the next thing you know, I'm buying a pinball machine, and I'm like, "What am I doing?" You know what I mean? Like, I was like, "This is the," and I noticed each one of them was like a month or 2, so I'd be happy for like a month or 2, and then I'd be like, "What's the next thing?" Right? And then all of a sudden I started going, "You know what I wanna do instead? I wanna have experiences with my kids." So I just was like, "Hey, you know what? That concert you wanna go to, let's go. Oh, you like musicals? Well, not really my thing, but let's go do that." Right?
Mm.
And I've had some of the most, amazing experiences with them, and each one of them, I have a different, very specific relationship with each one of them, and that's just I only got 4, you got 6. You have 6, right?
6 and a son-in-law now, and I just gotta say I've really admired watching you through social media, obviously.
Yeah.
The way you've shown up with your kids, it's been, you've been a great example to me in that.
Oh, well, thank you, man, and I love seeing one of the things we kinda said off air is I love seeing people I know and care about succeed. And is especially when I see them succeed through rough times, and, like, to watch you succeed and watch you how much you love your kids and see your kids developing in places where statistically in our space, people fall off, you know? It goes, it says a lot about your character that you've been able to stay consistent through that. Even though maybe, and I recognize as I'm saying this, you might be thinking to yourself, "Well, you don't know the whole story." I can just tell you that from an outsider, even though maybe it wasn't perfect, you were consistent, and
Thank you.
that's awesome. So, okay, next
Mm.
question. What's
'Kay.
your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Mhm. My biggest failure was, um, mm, I would say my biggest failure has been an ongoing challenge for me, not necessarily one specific moment or event. Is that, too often in my life, I've played it small.
Mm,
I've I've let myself get off easy, been a little too passive, not confident enough.
mm,
And I think a lot of people that see my life would say, "What are you talking about? Like, you're one of the most confident people that I know." And my response inside is, think about what I could have done with more confidence, really. Like, if
mhm,
it was a deep, abiding thing in me,
mhm.
I wonder what I could have accomplished. What I've learned, that potential is limitless.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of learning how to tap into that and give yourself permission to not be small.
yeah. The Savior said to his disciples, he said, "If you have faith of a mustard seed, you could say to that mountain, 'Move,' and it would move,
Mm,
and nothing would be impossible to you." And I believe that's literal. I don't believe that that is something he was just kind of figuratively saying.
mm,
Like, it is shocking when you read the studies and you think how much your mindset affects literally the external world around you. So, you know, um And, but I'll tell you, if you think you're playing small right now, you're doing big things, so I can't wait to see when you finally figure it out and you explode and become like a worldwide phenomenon because you have all the tools, man, you know? So,
Thanks.
uh, last question, at one point later on down the road, you're gonna pass away, and when you do, there's gonna be a eulogy. What's the one thing you want someone to say about you in your eulogy?
When I spent time, it's a good question.
Yeah,
Be patient with me while I process the emotions for a second.
yeah.
Mm. Anytime I spent time with Thurman, I felt loved
Mm,
and that I could be a better person.
mm. That's awesome. Yeah. Dude, you're a good guy. And,
Right,
like,
man.
we all are, but you're such a good example out there. I mean, I knew it from the beginning. One thing I would say about you and to anybody else who's listening to this who doesn't know Thurman, from the minute I met you on the mission, you were somebody that I wanted to be around.
Mm.
And that was not every missionary. Um, and you were somebody who exuded an energy, a spirit, whatever you want to call it, that like you people wanted to be around you. And that has to be good for your clients, your kids, and the people who are around you, and so keep that up, dude. You're on the right path for sure, at least from my perspective, whatever that matters. So,
Same to you, brother. I
awesome.
love watching you and I admire all the good work you do. And this has been fun.
Yeah,
This has
man,
been fun and meaningful. Thank you.
it's gotta be less than 25 years next time we talk, dude. Uh,
Seriously.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it will be. I think we'll cook up some stuff here real soon.
I think we will too. Hey, where can people find you if they wanna follow you?
Yeah, so the you've got my name there spelled correctly, and if you search it that way, spelled correctly, you won't find anybody but me. It's
Yeah,
Facebook, Instagram, and that's actually my website, thurmonthomas.com.
awesome.
But yeah, just my full name on Insta and Facebook and my website.
Awesome, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're gonna put some stuff together. We're gonna have some fun for sure.
Let's do
So
it.
awesome. For those of you who are listening, if you haven't already subscribed, I don't know what you're doing with your life if you're not a subscriber, but you need to change. You need to change right now. Change your mindset. And to everybody else, it's been great, and we'll talk to you again soon.